All right, let's get into it. Today, we're unpacking one of the most incredible legal turnarounds in history. It's a story about an entire people who were sentenced to death by a law that was supposedly unbreakable and how they found a way out.
So, just imagine this for a second. A law is passed and it says you and everyone you know are to be completely wiped out. Now, what if that law, by its very design, could never ever be taken back? That's the impossible knot we're going to try and untangle today.
So, the story kicks off at this moment of absolute crisis. The villain of the story, Haman, he's gone. But the genocidal law that he set in motion, it's still on the books. And that's a huge problem, because this wasn't just any law. It was literally designed to be unbreakable.
You see, the whole issue hinged on this really fascinating and frankly terrifying part of Persian law. Once an official order was written in the king's name and stamped with his royal seal, that was it. It was permanent, set in stone. Haman had used this exact system to seal the fate of the Jewish people, and legally speaking, there was no undo button. And you can just feel the human cost of this. Queen Esther putting her own life on the line, goes before the king and basically asks this heartbreaking question. I mean, the law might be absolute, but the suffering it was about to cause was just unthinkable. The clock was ticking big time.
So, how in the world do you solve a problem that's legally impossible to solve? Well, the answer wasn't at all what you might expect. It came from a completely different direction, an absolutely ingenious countermove.
And here it is. This is the brilliant twist. The king and his advisor, Mordecai, they realized they couldn't just tear up the old law. It was impossible. So instead of trying to break it, they decided to neutralize it by writing a new one. I mean, talk about thinking outside the box when the stakes are literally life and death. So the king basically gives Mordecai the ultimate green light. He says, use my name, use my royal seal, write whatever new law you need to write. He's handing over the very same irreversible authority that was used to condemn them in the first place. This move created this completely wild legal situation. You have the old, unchangeable law that says they must be destroyed, still technically in effect, but right next to it, you now have a new, equally unchangeable law, giving them the full legal right to defend themselves and destroy anyone who attacks them. You've got two irreversible laws on a direct collision course. And let's be really clear here. This wasn't just a quiet suggestion or some kind of pardon. This was a legally binding right, straight from the throne. The law itself, the very thing that had been their death sentence, was now their shield and their sword. Okay, so the stage is set for this massive showdown across the entire empire. And when that fateful day finally came, what happened was nothing short of a total, complete reversal of fortunes. When the day of the battle arrived, the tables were turned so completely it's hard to even imagine. Armed with the power of the king's new decree, the people who were supposed to be victims became the victors. The text describes this decisive win, a total flip of how the day was supposed to go. The numbers alone are just staggering. In the capital city of Susa, just in the capital, they defeated 500 of the enemies who rose up to attack them that day. And then there's this number, 10. This one is significant. That's how many of Haman's own sons were killed in the fighting. It's like the final nail in the coffin of their father's wicked plan, a total collapse. Now, this victory wasn't just happening on its own. It was being reinforced by a massive political shift. As the Jewish people were defending themselves, their champion, Mordecai, was gaining incredible power and influence in the kingdom, which only made their position stronger everywhere. So the very man that Haman had plotted to destroy was now becoming one of the most powerful and respected people in the entire Persian Empire. If that's not a complete reversal, I don't know what is. Okay, so it's an incredible story of survival, right? But what's the big idea here? Why does this story get told over and over? Let's zoom out and look at the core theme that scholars point to, something called the principle of reversal. So theologians see this as a classic example of the principle of reversal. It's this idea that pops up again and again, that human plans, especially the evil ones, don't just get stopped, they get completely turned on their head, often in a really ironic way to bring about the exact opposite result. And you can see this pattern all over the story. Haman builds a gallows to execute Mordecai, but ends up being executed on it himself. In that same ironic way, his indestructible law, which was meant to destroy his enemies, ends up causing the downfall of his own allies.
So, from a theological viewpoint, the ultimate point of the story is about divine sovereignty. It's making the case that even when human laws and human power seem totally final, there's a higher power that can step in and rewrite the ending completely.
And this idea, it echoes in other ancient texts too, like this line from Psalm 124, which basically frames this kind of unbelievable escape as a divine rescue. It says, without that intervention, we would have been toast. And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question, one that applies way beyond this ancient story. How often, even in our own lives, in our own world, are the best solutions found not by trying to smash the rules, but by understanding them so well that you can use them to write a whole new outcome? It's definitely something to think about.